As many of you know, I have been using the hatred towards me to speak out about missing people. With Selena Not Afraid, I did that. She's not the only one, though. See, a lot of these cases that I spoke about, I made a video 10 months before Selena Not Afraid disappeared about the missing and murdered indigenous people of part of Montana and the surrounding area. It's right on the corner of states. South Dakota, Nebraska, Wyoming, and Montana. There's a very small population per square mile there, and they've got well over 100 missing people just from that area in about a 10-year period. In order to understand that kind of numbers outside of the Native American community, you would have to be homeless. Only the homeless know more of that than the Native Americans. Kaycera Stops Pretty Places is one of the people I spoke about. She's from that area. Selena Not Afraid from that area. Frida Noses Gun, also from that area. There's also a lot of boys who are missing from that area, and I've spoken out about a few of them too. But right now, this one is about Kaycera Stops Pretty Places. With Selena Not Afraid, a lot of people took a look at those videos. A lot of people looked at the video that I made 10 months before and decided, because I knew so many things about the missing people in that area, that I must be the one who made her disappear. Oh no, it turns out she was murdered by other Native Americans. She was murdered by exposure. Nobody in that area is dumb enough to believe that she could have survived with the clothes that she was wearing. Nobody in that area with half a fucking brain would have allowed her to go off in the woods like that. Actually, it isn't the woods there, is it? No, it's not. It's mostly rolling hills, grasslands. Not a lot of shade. But it gets cold up there. That biting cold that killed her, the homeless have to endure every single night. And even with the right gear, it's hell. And a lot of homeless people would rather freeze to death than use those things, because in many places those things are illegal. Now, what do we have to say about Kaycera Stops Pretty Places? Well, for starters, there's plenty of stuff here on the internet that you could look up. Plenty. There's lots of stuff that you could look up yourselves. Her name is up here. Selena Not Afraid. Kaycera Stops Pretty Places. Frida Noses Gun. That's not even close to all of them, obviously. Those are just the three biggest. So I used notoriety and hatred towards me over the slander by Natalie Bollinger and her family, as well as the wrongdoing of police across the country. I used that attention, even that hatred towards me, to try to do some good for the world. A lot of people are, but you're not listening to them. You're not listening to these Native Americans who are going through this. I mean, just looking it up right now, I'm seeing about 5 months in some of these situations, and 6 months in some of them, where they're talking about missing people. These web sleuth sites, they picked up these cases, most of them at least 10 to 12 months after I first reported on them. Matter of fact, it was my video about the missing people of Hardin, Montana. They got a lot of these web sleuths to actually take a look. A lot of these web sleuth sites that are now running the stories about these missing women ran my story and Natalie's story first, and they got a lot wrong. They've also gotten a lot wrong in me. You know that Selena Not Afraid had an older brother? Did you know that he was shot to death by the police? Did you know that Native Americans are more likely to get shot by the police than black people? Did you know that? Per capita by a lot, because Native Americans comprise a much smaller portion of our population. A lot of these sites that screwed up my stuff didn't bother to give you all the information. They weren't interested in even making sure their information was right. A lot of people told me thank you for trying to help find these folks. And you're welcome. But also, just finding a body isn't justice. And if you never find the body, where's the justice? People don't know if their family members are alive or dead. Also, I don't know if anybody in Hardin, Montana is watching this, but if you are, I want to shout out Stacy King and Mary Lion Shows and Lila Mountain Sheep. Also, John Nomi. And Gilbert, I love your smile. So we're going to type up a name here. Kaycera Stops. Oh, we've got it right here. Kaycera stops pretty places. Cause of death. Thursday marked the 140th day. This was updated last on January 15th of 2020. Thursday marks the 140th day since Kaycera Stops Pretty Places was found dead, and medical examiners still don't know the cause of death. 18-year-old was reported missing August 27th. They found no evidence of injury or natural disease. Now, as far as giving you all of the details, I'd like you guys to try to get those details, not from these web sleuth groups. I want you guys, if you actually can, this is more than just you being a nosy asshole, a drama hound and a drama monger. Try to get a hold of the, well, primarily it's Crow. If you guys travel to the Little Bighorn River, you know where that's at, right? The Little Bighorn River, Custer's Last Stand and all that. That's where these people are missing from. Over 100 of them in a 10-year period. Over 100. With kaycera stops pretty places, there are people who know things, who are trying to tell those things. They're trying to tell those stories. They just need someone who is willing to listen and speak out for them. Are you willing to do that? I'm not sure if you've noticed, but Native Americans have maintained their peaceful protest, despite the fact that they are going through worse. You mean to tell me you can't fight for missing and murdered Indigenous people? Do their lives not matter? The family of Native American teenager Sarah Stops Pretty Places is demanding justice after she was found dead in Hardin, Montana in late August, just 2 weeks after her 18th birthday. Kaycera was a member of the Crow and Northern Cheyenne tribal communities in Montana. She lived with her grandmother. That was October 10th, 2019. That's 8 days before my birthday. 8 days before Alicia Bollinger went on a high-speed chase with her dad through 2 states. And although her dad was the one who did wrong, I was the one that people were calling and threatening to kill and accusing of killing her. By the way, Alicia Michelle Bollinger is still alive. Thank goodness. Dead people can't stand trial. Now, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I could be reading about this. Could be. What are they from? Let's read this one from the Billings Gazette. A lot of times it won't let me. It says that I need to sign up for them or whatever. It won't let me read it. It says, no cause of death found for Kaycera Stops Pretty Places. Investigation still active. Thursday, 140th day since Kaycera Stops Pretty Places was found dead, and medical examiners still don't know the cause of her death. The 18-year-old was reported missing August 27th. That's Jamie Curtis's birthday. The one I know from Rapid City, South Dakota. It says 2 days later, a passerby found her body in the backyard of a Hardin home. Her death was classified as suspicious. The investigation into her death is still open and active 5 months later, but medical examiners were unable to determine a cause for Stops Pretty Places' death, according to Bighorn County Attorney Jay Harris. This happens a lot. Cause of death undetermined, undetermined, undetermined. If it's not undetermined, well, it's exposure to the elements. Very good way to kill somebody, isn't it? No murder weapon. Oh, it's not my fault. They walked all the way out there in the middle of nowhere during a blizzard 27 miles away from anywhere. Nobody does that. An alcoholic is not, I can tell you from experience, that an alcoholic is not going to walk 27 miles. They got drunk and wandered off. Oh, fuck, they didn't. Now, this woman was found dead actually inside a town. No cause of death. Then why is she dead? Some causes of death were ruled out, but nothing in the autopsy or toxicology report were conclusive to rule a cause, he said. The ruling was based on an autopsy conducted by State Deputy Medical Examiner Dr. Andrea Orkiv, Harris said. State medical examiners found no evidence of injury or natural disease, Harris said. So she shouldn't be dead. No arrests have been made in the case. The investigation which is led by the Bighorn County Sheriff's Office, the same ones who, well, before Selena Not Afraid had her autopsy. Oh my God, you guys should probably watch that. I don't really even want to talk about it, but yeah, they made decisions and said things that were about her death without doing an autopsy. Now, if they haven't done an autopsy, how could they speak about those things? If you guys start looking into the death of Selena Not Afraid and Kaycera Stops Pretty Places, you realize they're all working with the same guys doing the same things. As Deputy Holloway here in Chapel, Nebraska said, it's just human nature. You need somebody to go in with you to make those cops do their jobs. But for your safety and for the safety of your loved ones, you need to take a video recording device and you need to record everything. Otherwise, it's your word versus the cops. Her family still feels investigators should treat her death as murder, and so do I, and are frustrated that 5 months later there have been no tangible results with the autopsy or arrests or charges, said Stops Pretty Places Aunt Melissa Lone Bear. And I really don't want to appeal to money grub and SOBs, but there is a $5,000 reward. 5,000 bucks. The family wants to keep pressure on investigators. That's partly why they held a march and rally at the end of September at the Bighorn County Courthouse. As many as 100 people marched to urge a thorough investigation. Now, if Native Americans got violent, would you support them the way you have BLM? Of Christopher Columbus, George S. Custer, would you hate them? Would you show them the hatred that you have shown, well, black folks who are tearing down statues of slave owners, as well as Northern generals who really, really treated black people like shit? You want to talk about America's history towards black people? Look at their history towards the poor and look at their history towards the Native Americans. Who's marginalized? We need to work together. BLM needs to speak up about these crimes committed by black folks. Admit that those things are wrong and speak out about it when other people do it as well. You're not the only ones getting shot by cops. You're not the only ones getting murdered. You're not the only ones who the police won't actually investigate, and in most cases won't even pretend. You are not the only ones. Kaycera Stops Pretty Places. I want you to remember that name. Stops Pretty Places. Maybe that'll help you to remember. Have you ever stopped? You saw a flower you'd never seen before. You like the colors on it. Or a beautiful piece of artwork. Or maybe some architecture. Maybe there's a building that you can't help but stop and look at on the way to work or on the way to school. I know a lot of you college students, once you get out on your own, you want to find a nice quiet place where you can sit down and not have to deal with all the obsessive college drama. When you do that, when you stop at a pretty place, I want you to think of her. And I want you to think about what you can do to help her and those like her and their families. Maybe if you help their families, they'll want to help yours. Maybe if you help to find their killers, you put more hands on that job. Many hands makes for light work. Maybe if you can help with this serious situation we have with missing and murdered Indigenous people, well, I'd say maybe they'll help you out with BLM. But honestly, I've seen a lot of missing and murdered Indigenous people, well, people who post up about missing and murdered Indigenous people, also posting about BLM and about the terrible things the police have been doing. But you know, the homeless are always left out of that. People say the same things about the homeless that they say about Native Americans and black folks. They're all druggies. They're all alcoholics. They're child molesters and rapists. They're thieves. Well, yeah, I've heard this my whole life. I also know a lot of Native Americans. I know a lot of black folks. And I know a lot of homeless folks. There have been 3 more rallies since then on the courthouse steps, including one on January 8th, which also raised awareness for missing hardened teen Selena Not Afraid. These things are hand in hand, people. The march in September led to the creation of a missing and murdered persons task force in Bighorn County, which was just a week after the march. The sheriff's office is working closely with the task force, Harris said. He still wants to recruit members from the Bureau of Indian Affairs and the FBI. You don't want the FBI to help. Are you fucking kidding me? They're fucking useless as tits on a boar. If you can get them to help, then maybe they will do something. But as we all know, Native Americans are quite marginalized. They're higher on the list than than black folks by a lot. As far as being murdered by the police, Native Americans got black folks beat by a shit ton. And it is murder. I'm not going to pretend it's not murder because they're not black. I'm not going to pretend that George Floyd was not murdered. I'm not going to pretend that he is not dead as the result of bad police actions. Nobody cares. Well, that's not entirely true, is it? The Native Americans care, don't they? Black folks care, don't they? Sorry, train. Homeless people care, don't they? But those of you not going through it make excuses why those going through it must want it, need it, choose it, or deserve it, or it never happened. That's your automatic go-tos. By the way, I don't have a real high opinion of Sheriff Big Hair. That's his name. The task force goal is to supervise active investigations, refine current policies, and identify causes and solutions for the high number of missing and murdered people in Bighorn County. Why is it that some mentally ill dude was the first one to speak out about this stuff? You need to fight for each other's rights. When they come for your neighbor, are you going to watch? Or are you going to do something? Because when they've cleared all the neighbors out of the houses and they come for you, who's going to stop them? Nobody. You watched everybody who might leave first, get dragged away first, making your excuses. They must have wanted it, needed it, chose, deserved it. Oh, well, the ICE folks came over and got the immigrants that were living next door, but it's okay because I'm not an immigrant. Meanwhile, they got kids living in 2-foot by 4-foot cages that aren't even tall enough to stand in. Are you fucking kidding me? Then they came for the neighbor on the other side. He was Native American. And they shot him. But you didn't say nothing, did you? You minded your own business. Then there's a black guy across the street. Him and his whole family over there. He's going to be sitting in prison for a while for a crime he didn't commit. His family is not going to be able to stay in the house. They can't afford it without his wages. So now you got 3 people that you allowed these things to happen to and didn't say a goddamn word. It must be okay because it's not happening to you. Tell that to the family of Selena Not Afraid. Tell that to the family of Kaycera Stops Pretty Places. And when you stop somewhere pretty, I want you to remember these human beings. Now let's continue further because it seems there's more. The task force is a local effort amid statewide and national attention to the crisis of murdered and missing Indigenous people. Still, a lack of action and accountability from the sheriff's office was the family's complaint when Stops Pretty Places initially went missing at the end of August. That's the same complaint that Selena Not Afraid's family had. Let's see. Still, a lack of action and accountability from the sheriff's office was the family's complaint when Stops Pretty Places initially went missing at the end of August. Little has been done to assuage those fears, Lone Bear said. Now, where else did we encounter situations? Oh, yeah, with me and Natalie. The police are not accountable to their actions. The police here in Chapel, Nebraska, the police in Hardin, Montana, the police in Boulder, Colorado, the police in Thornton, Colorado, Arapahoe County, Cheyenne County. That's here in Nebraska. Arapahoe County is in Colorado. These things aren't just happening to black people. They're not just happening to Native Americans. They're happening to poor people nationwide. The theft of children by CPS specifically targets the poor. And the more poor you are, the more they target you. The more they're allowed to lie in court. Because they know they can get away with it. But you don't have any money. And then before you can even hire a lawyer, they got 10,000 expensive hoops they want you to jump through, knowing you don't have the money to do it. And after you've wasted all of your money jumping through their hoops, they say you're not trying because you don't have any money, because you lost everything from jumping through their hoops. You take away people's children because they can't afford $275 a month in insurance. So you take on that insurance and you pay somebody $1,000 a month, $1,200 a month to take care of someone else's kid. And how are they taking care of them? There are currently 18,000 children missing from foster care. On average, 5 children per day die in foster care. A lot of Native Americans go through this too. Anyway, it says, my greatest fear is that they are going to try and sweep it under the rug and stamp it solved. Yolanda Frazier, Stops Pretty Place's grandmother, told the Billings Gazette in September. They say the sheriff's office didn't do enough to proactively look for Stops Pretty Places before she died. So, she was missing apparently for a while before they found her dead. And apparently, there's a good possibility the autopsy says that she was still alive in between when she went missing and when they found her dead. Natalie Bollinger was alive in between when I got the call that she was missing and when Joseph Michael Lopez shot her in the head. Well, I spent that time trying to help find Natalie. Her family wasn't trying to find Natalie. They were busy harassing me and threatening me. Who are Natalie Bollinger's predators? Her family and her choice of men. Why am I bringing up all of these other names that are not Kaycera, Stops Pretty Places? Because they're all related. I don't mean related by blood, although we really are. Every human being on the planet is related somehow. They're all related because the police, their tactics are the same nationwide. The jurisdictional bullshit that prevents the right thing from being done is also nationwide. Police officers in many of these places need to be reviewed, especially with so many cases still open and active. There's a pretty decent chance that there are police officers who are involved with these murders. Yes, police officers. That officer who got busted, what was it, last year for being a serial rapist? He'd been on the force over 20 years in the state of Colorado. When they refuse to take your report, that allows the predator to get away to do it to someone else, and someone else, and someone else. It hurts me to imagine the number of victims that went in there to turn that police officer in who were given the same treatment that I was. And when they were hysterical about it, were dragged off to an institution and drugged. And I've had many women tell me their stories of that exact situation happening. Let's see, it says, they say the sheriff's office didn't do enough to proactively look for Stops Pretty Places before she died, and they didn't. When they reported her missing, Bighorn County didn't put posters out, Lone Bear said. They didn't put anything out. Stops Pretty Places did not receive a missing and endangered person advisory, nor did the sheriff's office issue an alert to the media about her disappearance. That was the same situation with Henny, Lone Bear said. Now, who's Henny? Henny Scott. This is a 16-year-old. Ah, right here. Henny Scott was found dead in the yard of a Lame Deer home in 2018. Henny was reported missing for almost 2 weeks before the FBI issued a MEPA for the 14-year-old girl. I'm sorry, she was 14. Now I feel bad because I can't remember the name of the 16-year-old girl who was killed there. Henny Scott was found dead in the yard of a Lame Deer home in 2018. Henny was reported missing for almost 2 weeks before the FBI issued a MEPA for the 14-year-old girl. Her cause of death was ruled as exposure, and prosecutors declined to seek charges, saying they found little evidence that a federal crime had been committed. Somebody's dumping bodies in people's yards. They changed their MO. Got scared of dumping bodies in yards. Now you notice that the first body was dumped in Lame Deer, and the second body was dumped in Hardin. The third body was dumped out in the country. It is less likely that law enforcement had to do with Selena Not Afraid's death than with Henny Scott's or kaycera Stops Pretty Places. But it's still a very good possibility, especially given the fact that so many are getting away with. All right. Months later, attention is again on Bighorn County as law enforcement searches for Selena Not Afraid. Harris said the response from the community and law enforcement to the 16-year-old's disappearance shows changing attitudes. And what did it take to do that? 14,000 people watched a video that had less than 30 views on it for 10 months. Less than 30 views. But because of the hatred against me, when Selena Not Afraid disappeared from that very same place, over 14,000 views just on that video. 12,000 more on a video about Selena Not Afraid going missing. What helped to change their attitudes? Me. Me. Is it all me? Hell no. But 14,000 people, that gets the word out sure as shit. I was looking at how many people looked at these ones from the Billings Gazette and places like that. I'm like, or from the Billings news channels. I'm like, oh my God, they've got 300 views. They've got 60 views. They got 88 views. I mean, not very many people are looking at this. But I made a big fucking noise just like I did for Natalie. I made a big fucking noise for Selena too. And when Alicia Bollinger disappeared, I made a big fucking noise for her too. You need somebody to make a big fucking noise, I'll do it. If y'all haven't noticed, I've been standing up to these son of a bitches for years. Long before Natalie Bollinger was ever killed. It says the magnitude of the response is certainly a strong indicator of the rebuke of the status quo, Harris said. We're fed up with this dynamic. Yeah, I'm fed up with it too. You better do some actual changes this time instead of just talking about it or wasting money on groups that ain't gonna do shit. Unlike Stops Pretty Places or Henny, a MEPA was issued for Selena Scott just hours after her suspicious disappearance. And goodness, the girl went missing around 2 p.m. on January 1st in Bighorn County at a rest stop between Billings and Hardin along Interstate 90. I-90's got a lot of deaths. A lot. I-90 goes all the way to Colorado. Cheyenne to fucking Billings. A lot of people are killed on I-90. A lot. Not just Native Americans. A lot of bodies are dumped there. And a lot of hitchhikers are picked up there. It's the middle of the United States, but it's Wyoming. It's not like picking up a hitchhiker in Denver and there might be 400 cameras on you from local businesses. Train! It says the girl went missing around 2 p.m. on January 1st in Bighorn County at a rest stop between Billings and Hardin along Interstate 90. 8 days into the search, a special child abduction team from the FBI was called to assist with her disappearance. She is still missing. Well, she's been found since then. And by the way, the family were not happy with the FBI either. At least the ones who were messaging me. They said the FBI was basically just playing for the media. Selena Not Afraid was found dead of exposure, the same thing as Henny Scott, the same thing they murder the homeless with in many places across the nation. It says anyone with information on Selena's whereabouts or with tips on Stop Pretty Places case can call the Bighorn County Sheriff's Office tip line at 406-665-9780. All right, I'm sorry I missed all of you guys typing on the side. All right, someone named Liam Hall is typing, "You are rasket, man. Dude, you're rasket." Ash D typed, "Not racist, Liam." Liam doesn't know how to spell racist. He's not an American, and he's trying to create racial divide, tension, and hatred. A lot of foreign people are doing this right now. I've seen posts from people from China, posts from people from India, posts from people from Pakistan, all in charge of Facebook groups that are here in the United States, where a lot of the people are into the, well, the whole rotten ass police fight. But then once you get somebody who's from another country who's in charge of that group, this person doesn't know shit about what's going on. They're not here. And the things that many of them have been chopping up and dicing up and turning into things that they're not show that many people are trying to create a violent situation in the United States who are not in the United States. Liam Hall typed, "You done paid the bodies." And then Liam Hall typed, "He dumped the bodies." Ash D typed, "Are you a troll?" Laughed my ass off. Char. And then Liam Hall types, "He's on meth RN." Liam Hall typed, "He won't address to GE facts." Ash D typed, "Liam, your rambling is pretty intelligible." And then Liam types again, "He's on meth." Well, with Selena not afraid, a lot of people wanted to accuse me because I was trying to help find her and get her safe, which I had been doing since long before Natalie was ever killed. People were assuming that I had something to do with it. And then, just like with Natalie Bollinger, people are like, "Oh, well, I'm going to go tell stories." One woman up there, meanwhile, I'm literally the guy that I have my trailer parked on his property, the dude who owns this house, who's been busting his ass so that he can take care of his kids and be a good father. I was at his house without a vehicle, by the way, when Selena Not Afraid disappeared. But because of the situation with Natalie, and I knew that this was going to happen, people started assuming I did it, and telling people, "Oh, he did this and he did that." And thank goodness there was a few people who actually looked it up instead of just word of mouth. And they said, "Yeah, actually the guy that killed her is in prison. Sean didn't do it. So maybe you should back the fuck off and let him help to find our friend." And some of these people, yes, they were Selena Not Afraid's friends. Now, there was one woman who tried to claim that after Selena Not Afraid disappeared, that I had given her a ride in my truck that I don't have. That's kind of a big hole in the story. While I was in Nebraska, which is also another big hole in the story. And then there's Well, the fact that she said she had to throw herself out of a moving vehicle. Now, what does she look like after this supposed thing happened? She only said that because of the rumors that were flying around. It became popular to hate me and popular to pretend. And as soon as that happens, we got a much bigger problem on our hands because now we're taking away to find the person who actually did it, and we have started a witch hunt to harm innocent people again. But it's fine, isn't it? It's fine, isn't it? We're supposed to just let it go, let it go, let it go. All these people telling me to let it go, and when it happens to them, they can't let it go. Why can't they? Because they're not allowed. They may want to let it go. With all the bullshit having to go through, they don't get the opportunity to. The guy who I'm staying with, his kids are living with someone else entirely, and he has to have supervised visits for a crime that he didn't commit. His ex did, not while they were together. They were broken up. She did it in her own vehicle on her own time. And I'm sure that he would love to just let it go. I mean, his ex has been stalking him for at least a year, literally stalking him. She thought to herself, you know, if I go over there and have sex with him and get pregnant, he'll have me back. No, he left you when you two had 3 kids together. He left you and went on to try to provide for his kids, to try to get a house for his kids, to try to have property that his kids can be safe on, where he can protect them. With all the crap that his ex put him through before he moved out, I'm sure he wanted to let it go. But he's got kids with this woman. And now he's got court bullshit that he's got to go through. You want to tell him to let it go? That's like telling him to throw away his children. No. Selena Not Afraid. Her twin sister killed herself at 11 years of age. She was the youngest suicide in Montana history. Selena Not Afraid's older brother was shot to death by the police. Another one of Selena Not Afraid's sisters was ran over outside of the Billings airport. In that situation, as well as the situation where Selena Not Afraid disappeared, there was a woman who was present in both situations. And in both situations, she claimed that she couldn't remember anything. Four deaths, one family. All of them atrociously tragic. An 11-year-old committing suicide. Your twin sister committing suicide. Alicia Bollinger knows what that's like. And then her older brother shot to death by the police. And then her sister ran over at the Billings airport. There's a serial killer up there. A serial killer who knows what they're doing. A serial killer who understands police protocols. Probably a cop.